Hello, welcome back to A Boring Revolution, your number one news source for everything in regards to the Boring Company. I am coming to you today with a little bit of a controversial episode, but I think it's quite factual. I hope you enjoy it. I've been staying away from criticising the railways, whether that be in the US or Europe or here in the UK, mainly because I've been feeling a little bit sorry for the railway fanboys, or the train spotters as some people like to call them. There's nothing wrong with being a train spotter if you enjoy doing that. But hey, trains here in the UK, railway industry is getting hammered by the government. Lots of broken promises, obviously in the US. Amtrak is just a joke. And you know what? I don't need to criticise industries when they're run by bloody idiots. But I've been noticing a little bit more activity on the Twitter, people from the railways or supporters of the railways criticising electric vehicles and saying they're not the future and it's just a car. There's a certain critic here in the UK who just says it's just a car. This is his kind of a catchphrase, as it were. But it's the Tesla vehicles and lots of other vehicles like Zoox and Cruise and all these other companies, comma AI, they're not just cars. It's a lot bigger than that if you look at the business case. And I just wanted to come and attack this from kind of an efficiency perspective. And there's a lot of information out there talking about how inefficient like kind of owning your own car is. And it's not, for electric vehicles, that is not the case. That is a red herring. It really is. And I wanted to talk a bit more about that and just kind of discuss the data behind that, because I have some actual numbers that I've crunched. Anyway, but let's get into this. So thank you for tuning in. Really appreciate that. If this is your first time, that's incredible. Please like and subscribe to the channel, and please comment on the video. That helps the algorithm, and also will recommend you more videos like this one. Hit that bell icon if you want to be notified of all my future videos. So I really think this is a fascinating discussion, because we're at this period in history where kind of I feel like public transport, mass transit, is kind of in a resurgence, but electric vehicles, autonomous vehicles, that is coming up behind kind of your typical railway industry, and it's about to usurp it. To a certain extent. I don't think trains are going to go away, and I will cover that in a short while. But it's a fascinating moment in history, and I'm really glad to be part of it. So trams and trains are an extremely efficient means of transport, absolutely, and a good option for cities to reduce congestion and air pollution. Notice I've used the word cities there. I don't think for kind of small towns and rural communities, I don't think trams and trains are the right option. But given that the majority of the world's population is now living in cities and large towns and medium-sized towns and settlements, things like that, then obviously they're going to be part of the mix for now, at least, or a large part of the mix. So outside of Europe and Asia, they have a low market share of overall transport. So obviously in Europe, and especially the UK and Germany and places like that, we have excellent railways. The USA did have the best railway, but has now got possibly one of the worst in the Western world, but they still have a good network. Asia, places like Hong Kong and Tokyo and China, even places like the Philippines are getting good, railway infrastructure. But if you look elsewhere, if you look at Africa, if you look at South America, if you look at parts of the Middle East, railways play a very small, percentage, and it's not going to recover after what happens to the internal combustion engine, really. Once that's gone and we've got electric vehicles, places where the railways are not established or have a foothold are really going to struggle to make inroads in those areas if they've not already done it already. Future autonomous electric vehicles manufactured by Tesla and others are potentially a major source of competition in the coming 5 to 10 years. Yeah, if you can hire a Robo-Taxi for $4 or $5, and that takes you to work in the morning, why would you own a car? Why would you pay $6-7 for a train, or even $3. Why would you pay $3 for a train when you could get this for $5? It's definitely going to be competition. Many people in the railways are oblivious to the fact that this is coming. They are totally blindsided, and they don't think that this is going to happen. They think that things are going to stay as they are, and that is a major blind spot for them, and they just don't realise it. And unfortunately, these people will learn the hard way. But I'm not here to kind of rail on these people. What I'm saying is that the private ownership of cars will go away, but big companies will come in and take that market, and also potentially inroads into some other transportation options as well. How much more efficient are trains, and will this be enough to ensure their survival over the next 30 years? Trains and trams are very, very efficient means of moving people, especially when you push hundreds of people into every carriage. But this is the key caveat: that's not always the case. It's not like that 18 hours a day, or 24 hours a day if your system runs all the time. There are periods of time when that's not the case. There's also periods of time where literally they're empty, and you've got to kind of average things out. And the ability of companies like Tesla and the Boring Company and Zoox and these other startups moving into the autonomous vehicle space, the ability for them to remove vehicles from the system and have less vehicles operating at 80, 90, maybe even 95% capacity results in massive efficiency improvements over trains and trams. Because if you're running a tram that's got 3-4 carriages and you've only got 10-15 people on there, that is not anywhere near efficient as something like this. Really, it's miles off. So also, how efficient per mile could a Tesla AV get, and what are the implications for the Boring Company? Tesla autonomous vehicles. Tesla is focused on efficiency. They are ultra perfecting that kind of technology, analysing the data and trying to improve things all the time. And I believe that will play out in the Boring Company's vehicle as well. And also you've got other competitors who are copying Tesla's kind of efficiency focus. People like Lucid. Lucid is very, very focused on efficiency of its vehicles. And all this technology that's getting developed comes into multi-passenger vehicles as well. So, and I'll give you some data on that as well to kind of play into that. So how efficient is a train? Okay. So the efficiency of a train is difficult to calculate because it's constantly changing, and by quite large percentages over the course of a day. Whether it's in the evening or the afternoon, or in the morning, it can range quite considerably. So a train's electrical consumption varies greatly depending on the route. If you're going through, say, a very flat area, and the train stations are 6, 7, 8 miles apart, your efficiency is going to be really good. But if the train stations are 2, 3, maybe 4 miles apart, and the gradient, the topography of the land around you is quite hilly, there's a high gradient, your electrical consumption is going to be quite a bit more than the first scenario. So the route plays a great part of that equation, and also the gradient of the land. And average speed also plays a major factor in power consumption. If your tram is cruising around at 30-40 miles per hour, it's obviously going to consume a lot less electricity than a train that's getting up to 80 miles per hour, then going down to 50, then going down to 20, and then going to stopping, and then getting up to 80, and it's going down to 50 for a corner. Average speed, if the train is averaging 80, 90 miles per hour, it's going to consume a lot more electricity than your typical tram that's doing 20, 30 miles per hour in a city centre, just cruising along. The weight of a train will vary greatly from hour to hour. Obviously, as you can see here, this is London. This is why I no longer work in the kind of the south of England, is because this is common practice, and you don't need that in your life. You don't need to be stuck under someone's armpit. But putting hundreds of people in a carriage and having them basically like sitting there like sardines is very efficient, but it's not very nice. And sometimes it's completely the opposite of that, especially here in the north of England. You can have a carriage running at 8-9 o'clock at night and it might only have 4 or 5 people in there. So there you go. Diesel versus electrical power consumption. It's not really worth talking about this because diesel is disappearing, but here in the UK, the government's kind of reneging on its promises to get rid of diesel, and they're not electrifying lines, and hopefully it will be dead in 2030, but electrical overhead power networks are very much more efficient than diesel powertrains, even the kind of hybrid kind of systems that some people are pushing, which is bloody stupid really. So we should just be looking at electrical power consumption really. Weather events and infrastructure conditions, obviously when the railways are very wet and icy, or there might be leaves on the track and things like that, again it affects energy consumption. And obviously power, if you're going into very windy conditions, that again can also, if your train is absolutely ginormous, it's going to have like most trains are, it's going to have an effect on your energy efficiency. But if you kind of average things out in a typical kind of operation, those are the kind of numbers that I'm going to give you today. So I'm going to show you where I got this data from, and then it may surprise you, it may not surprise you, I don't know. It depends how informed you are of this particular topic, but this is the key performance data for how much energy a particular vehicle consumes per kind of mile. Okay? And this vehicle has got 1 passenger in, and this is how much it's consuming per mile that it travels, basically. So Tesla Model 3 Standard Range Plus, which is kind of the most efficient Tesla that I'm aware of. I think there might be a Model Y that's kind of close to this, but for now I think this is kind of the best data that we have. You're looking at 255 watt hours per mile. If you want to convert that to kilowatt hours per mile, it'd be 0.2555. Maybe for some people that it's easier, but I think for miles, I think watt hours per mile is kind of good. So this is quite low. If you were then to have 2 passengers, so say you were carpooling, it will be as low as 175 watt hours per mile. Now, this is assuming a lot of things, because a train and a car operate totally differently. Yeah. So if you are carpooling with a work colleague, you're going from point A to point B. You're not going from point A to point C to point D to point E to point B. You're just going there. Maybe you might stop for coffee along the way, but if we're going to do this properly, you're going to go from point A to point B. You're not going to be stopping. If you're using the motorway network, maybe in the morning it's fairly slow. You're cruising along at 55, 60 miles per hour. This kind of efficiency is possible, and you're not stopping very much, so you're not having to accelerate and deaccelerate that often. So that number is a key number, because that was super efficient, even comparing this to buses efficiency. Let's have a look at the competition, as it were. So we have these Bombardier trams. So I looked at various tram systems. The data is quite varied, but I think kind of the middle of the road, kind of your average tram, is this Bombardier one, and it's averaging around 206 watt hours per mile, which is not bad at all. Very impressive, actually. So you're getting good consumption here per passenger. So that's pretty damn good. Pretty damn good. But it's not a million miles away from this per passenger. Yeah. This is not per mile, though. This is, you've got to consider how many passengers, yeah. So 56 passengers, 206. Now you could obviously put 60, maybe 70 passengers in that carriage and get it way down, so you get it below this number, but that's not going to be comfortable for the occupants. What else is there? What else is there we can compare it to? So in the UK, one of the kind of the better railway operators is Merseyrail. They seem to be the ones that are kind of performing the best recently. So they've just recently bought some new trains. These trains are super efficient, electric trains. They have lots of seating capacity and lots of standing area as well. But in a typical kind of operational environment, you're getting in and around 264 watt hours per mile per passenger with 80 passengers on board. Obviously, again, this could increase dramatically. You could potentially 120, 130 passengers. But, again, you're affecting comfort here. And this is with breaking it up per carriage, as it were. We're not going to do the entire train. We want to be fair on this one, so we can compare each method of transport here. So, I mean, it's good. That's good. But again, look, 175. That is impressive. So, one particular startup that at one point I considered investing in, but I didn't in the end, was Proterra. They have the Catalyst E2 battery electric vehicle. Based on the data that I have, I'm going to show you in a moment, I'm getting 355 watt hours per mile with 20 passengers. The thing with buses is people are constantly getting off, constantly getting on, it's constantly stopping and starting. These are, just to make you aware that these kind of numbers are for standard kind of means of operating the vehicle. So for a Tesla, you're driving from point A to point B and generally not stopping. With a tram, you might be stopping every 700, 800 meters, maybe more than that, maybe 1500 meters. With a train, you might be stopping every 3, 4, 5, 6 miles, depends on the route. With a bus, again, it's kind of similar to a tram. You might be stopping every 5, 6, 700 meters. If you're averaging about 20 passengers in between stops, then you're going to get 355. Now, if it was absolutely full and it was pretty much the same number of people who are getting on and getting off, you'd have 178 watt hours per mile, which is just slightly above our Tesla Model 3, again with 2 passengers. And remember, you could put 4 passengers in here. Now, it wouldn't fall quite proportionately. It might end up around 150, but that goes to show you how a battery electric vehicle with electric motors is super efficient, even compared to the mass transit alternatives. Now, here is the question that you've probably been wanting me to answer for the entire video, and I've been stringing you along for a bit of time now. The 14-seat or 16-seat Boring Company AEV, I've done this with 14 seats because, again, I don't think it's going to be completely full all the time, but I think you can get pretty close to 14. What is the efficiency of this vehicle going to be operating in the Boring Company loop system? Now, for this particular example, I was getting some very high numbers, close to 500, just below 500 watt hours per mile. So what I did was I limited the top speed to 100 miles per hour, and I came out with a number for a 14-seat vehicle, which is averaging around 14 people per journey of around 318 watt hours per mile per passenger. How do we make this more efficient? Well, I have many videos if you have a look through my channel, how we can do this. So polished concrete road deck. Obviously, we're not going to polish the entire road deck inside the tunnel. It is going to be around 60 to 70% of a typical route is going to be polished concrete. That would reduce the rolling resistance, which is going to make things a lot more efficient. So you'd have 294 watt hours per mile. If you were able to run vehicles in platoons, it'd only need to be 5 vehicles long. Obviously, if you could have 10 vehicle platoons, which would be difficult to achieve, but it's possible, it'd be a lot more efficient than this, but you're looking at 266 watt hours per mile per passenger. And then if you were to further reduce the speed limit to around 80 miles per hour, you're looking at 237. In terms of our rankings, this is less than an electric bus, less than your Merseyrail Stadler train, less than your Model 3 that's typically driven by one person, the driver, and the only real competitors are the Bombardier Tram and the Tesla Model 3 with 2 passengers in it. Now, you could run this system with Model 3s with 4 passengers, again a lot more efficient, but if you want to increase the amount of throughput of the system, you're going to want these 14-seat Boring Company AEVs. They're going to have quite a larger battery. That's why it starts off around this number here, 318. So those are the numbers. If you disagree with those numbers, tell me in the comments below. Tell me what your numbers are. Don't just go off on a rampage saying that they're incorrect, because I know they're correct, and I'm going to show you the data in a moment. Show me your own numbers and think about acceleration and deacceleration. So think about it. Okay, so here is where I got my numbers from. So inside EVs, this is a little bit old now, but I think it's a good source. So here you go. There's one. I mean, I could have used that number, but I've gone for the highway number. Here is another. I've done that the wrong way. Here is another one. It's kind of published in a report. The energy efficient in joules per meter per person. I'm not sure using joules and meters is the best way of doing it. But as you can see, on this particular one, the tram is a lot more efficient than the electric bus, and the reason for that is they are stuffing the tram full of people, and that is just not a fair way to do it when for the rest of the day that tram might only be 60 to 70% full. So as you can see, a train is using a lot more energy than an electric bus. Here they've got an electric car, but they've only got one person in the electric car. So if you had two people, it'd be a lot less. It'd be a lot less than the electric bus. So there you go. Okay, here's the data sheet from Proterra on their website. As you can see, the E2 and E2 Max have quite good efficiency rates. The efficiency rates move dramatically depending on how many people are in the vehicle. Obviously, this can take 40 passengers, but with less passengers in, it seems to be slightly more efficient with these numbers. But if you work it out per passenger, it makes more sense to accept the higher number, as it were. So there's my data. So here's another study. I'll put a link to this study behind you. So this kind of just confirms what my thoughts were since I started thinking about this topic maybe 4 or 5 years ago. So as you can see here, this tram over a 5 kilometer distance consumes just 58 kilowatt hours, which is minuscule really. And this bus here consumes 82 kilowatt hours, for 5 kilometers. So as you can see, the issue with the tram, although it's not really an issue, but it's just worth pointing out, is that the acceleration energy is very high for a tram. And because it's having to stop and start all the time, and because it's a very, very heavy vehicle, like most trains are, that is adding to the inefficiency. Now, you could improve the efficiency, as I mentioned at the start, and I did actually for my calculations, was increase it to 10 kilometers and keep the number of stops around the same. I think I did it with 6 stops. So there you go, 5 kilometers, it consumes 58 kilometers per hour, and then the bus is 82. So those are all the numbers. I hope you appreciate the amount of effort I put into to get those numbers, because it took me quite a while. But who wins in the Robo-Taxi world? Well, everyone wins except the internal combustion engines. If you are a public transport operator, if you run an electric vehicle company, if you run a rideshare company, if you run a scooter company, just sells tiny little scooters for hire, then you're going to win. Literally everyone will win. Now, I don't think the number of people using public transport like trains is going to increase by 70, 80, 90%, but I can certainly see it increasing by almost 50% over the next 10 years, maybe slightly more than that. But I think there are a lot of different winners in this game, and I think that the market share will be divided up between a lot of different players. So really everyone wins. Battery powered vehicles have a slight advantage in terms of running cost. So what I mean by that is, even though the tram is using less energy per passenger per mile, they have to buy that electricity at the same time they use it, essentially. So they have to buy it and then they use it within 10 seconds or so. So the battery powered vehicles can buy their electricity at any point in that day. So they could buy wind in the middle of the night when the power provider is charging 2 to 3 cents per kilowatt hour. In the middle of the day, it might be 10, 12, 15 cents per kilowatt hour. So battery powered vehicles have a slight advantage, and they can choose when they buy the electricity. Thus, their running costs are going to be less than public transport, but public transport should still have good demand, and it should be still very affordable. So many Western railway systems will be expanded and modernised. So I'm talking about things like the Bay Area Rapid Transport, BART, and the LA Underground, and any kind of small to medium-sized public transport system, over 10 kilometres in length. They will all be expanded and modernised, and hopefully that will benefit a lot of people. Scooters and things like that obviously will do quite well, because in terms of energy efficiency, a scooter is going to be at least 3, maybe 4 times more efficient than the most efficient Tesla vehicle. So battery electric vehicle usage will 200x in Africa by the year 2032, so just over 10 years from now. I think Africa is going to be the growth market. I think South America as well is going to be the growth market. I don't think trains and mass transit are going to expand massively in places like Africa and South America and kind of Asia, certain parts of Asia, so the Middle East. I think that the battery electric vehicle is going to dominate, so that might be people like the Boring Company, Cruise, Commer AI, Zoox, these kind of people. Worldwide, car ownership will fall by 10 to 15% per annum until 2040, so that's every year. I think some years it will fall by more than that, some years it will fall in less than that, but I think kind of the average of 10 to 15% per annum, until owning a car is really only something that, reasonably high wealth, high net worth individuals do. Certainly I potentially might get rid of my car. I might hold on to it. I might end up buying something a lot smaller. Maybe instead of owning a car, I might own an electric scooter. Who knows? But in terms of car ownership, I think it's going to decline quite considerably, up to the point where maybe like 1 in 10 people own a car, maybe less than that. The Tesla Robo-Taxi network will be worth $62 billion by 2030. I think that's very conservative. I think it might be double, triple that. But it depends how quickly it expands. I think 2030 might be a little bit early, but who knows? Might be way before that. I mean, it's difficult to predict what's going to happen with regulations, really. But yeah, that's kind of the kind of breakdown for what I'm saying today. I'm not picking sides. I'm not saying certain players are going to take the entire market. I think everyone will do well out of this, but I think if you have this idea that there's going to be some kind of super insane modal shift where 50% of people are using trains in the next 10 to 15 years, then maybe whatever university you're attending or whatever influencer you're listening to, maybe you need to check their facts and then check their analysis, because I don't think you're looking at autonomous electric vehicles and considering how that's going to impact the world, as it were. Because even if autonomous vehicles weren't around, electric vehicles would disrupt a lot of different industries just on their own. So it's like an additional catalyst on top of another catalyst, having autonomous vehicles on top of pure electric vehicles and renewable energy, which is super ultra cheap. The key thing to remember when you're comparing one form of mass transit to another form of mass transit is what is the cost of building that form of mass transit to the other. So we know that the Boring Company is going to cost in and around 5.8, around $6 million per mile. Something like, a kind of high density train system is going to be a lot more than that. Cost per track mile is going to be 26.25 million per mile. There's big differences between these systems, and that is why it might be difficult for the railways to kind of take advantage of what's going to happen over the next 10 to 15 years. A lot of them are run by people who don't understand what the future entails, and thus they're still doing the same old things, and ultimately they will get they will be exposed to a lot more competition in the next 10 to 15 years than they have ever been exposed to. So there will be winners, there will be losers. I know Tesla and the Boring Company and various other people are going to be the winners. And so thanks for that. Okay, so just wanted to say, please consider following me on Twitter, Discord and Patreon if you've not already done so. Patreons, again, thank you to all my Patreons, wonderful people who are supporting me. I really do appreciate that. Thank you so much. And yeah, so thank you for joining me on the video. I really hope you enjoyed that. And yeah, I hope you enjoyed the analysis and you got something out of this. Okay, so yeah, remember guys, don't be boring, and I will see you on the next video. Take care now and have a good one. Thank you and goodbye.